Welcome back to Breakfast with Bob, Boston Marathon Edition. We're presented to you by Hyland's Leg Cramps. Stop the cramps, not your race, and the NormaTec Pulse Recovery System. The 120th Boston Marathon, and if we're in the Northeast, you have to bring in the woman who won the 1995 Ironman Triathlon World Championship from this area, Karen Smyers. Karen, how the heck are you?
I'm great. It's great to be at Breakfast with Bob.
I love having Karen with us. This is your hood. I mean, it's so funny. I like the guy from Gatorade yells over to another guy, "Hey, tell Babbitt Karen's going to be late." Everybody knows she's going to be late. It's like there's everybody, everywhere you go, it's Smyersville. Everybody knows you here. What the heck?
Well, it's even though I live in the East Coast, I do tend to be on West Coast time a lot. So
I've heard that. I have heard that.
It's like Breakfast with Bob at 2 in the afternoon. That's pretty good for me because that's about when I have breakfast sometimes.
I love that. So Karen, you have run this race how many times?
I have only done the Boston Marathon once.
I knew that. Was it last year? 2 years ago?
The year after the bombing.
Okay.
Yeah, I was very, very taken by the spirit of everybody
Yes.
coming back that year, and I just said, this is the year I have to do it.
How special was it?
It was fantastic. Yeah, it was totally everything I imagined it would be. It was really cool running down Boylston Street and seeing so many people out there just packing the streets regardless of anything that happened last year.
How was the city and the area galvanized by all the happenings of 2013 with the bombings, and then just seemed like it united everybody that, hey, we got to take our city back?
Yeah, I mean, I've been coaching a marathon group for a decade or more, and it was just palpable. We were out there training that year afterwards, and there was just such a spirit among the runners that you could just feel it, that everybody was just, it was true, it's just a uniting thing. And so much, as awful as it was, there was a lot of positive things that came out of it that just sort of warmed my heart in some ways, that made up for the awfulness of it all.
So, and with you is your wonderful husband, Mr. Mike King, who has produced a new documentary on Roger Bannister that is premiering this evening.
Well, premiering, maybe not exactly premiering, but it's being shown across the street. I think it's available now on iTunes and Amazon. So if anyone wants to stream it,
oh my God, you can stream it already.
Yeah. I think it just came on a couple of days ago. I think we're up to number 40 something on there.
Very cool.
And so it's an hour documentary on the events leading up to Roger breaking the 4-minute mile and the historical significance of it in England, and a lot of interviews with one of his pacemaker who has recently passed.
Yes.
And another competitor from Maine who was at Oxford who was at Yale and went to Oxford postgrad and ran for Oxford, and a spectator who was there and who is just hilarious watching the. He makes the show. This spectator, but so it's good.
May 6th, 1954.
Correct.
Yeah, and
we were trying to get it out for the for the 60th year.
Yes,
it's taken 2 years longer than we wanted to have it open.
And the genesis of this, so it started with you were doing a series on milers.
Yeah, we were doing a series for the UK, following 8 British runners trying to make the 1500 at the London Olympics. And by doing that, you have 12 episodes. It's kind of like a reality, following them around, going them a race. Yeah. And you had to fill it in with a different theme every episode. And we kind of mingled in historical stuff of all the tradition of the British miler, which starting from Bannister and then going through Sebco, not in this order, but there are, how many world record holders? Ovett, Cram, blah, blah, blah. Dave Bedford's in there who won who kind of says, which I never knew, he goes, I used to run behind a car at 16 miles an hour to see what it feels like to be running a 4-minute pace, So there's a lot of those type of people that we had interviewed, and it kind of, after it was over, we had a lot of nice footage about the Bannister story, so we decided to make a documentary, and we kind of re-interviewed Roger and picked up some more interviews, and I think it came out quite well.
Well, you know what's amazing to me is the fact that, like you said, he went to work in the morning, he sharpened his spikes at the hospital, took the train.
Yeah, he took the train, and he happened to be on the same train as his coach. And they were talking.
No plan.
It was just by accident, and I think he took 3 or 4 days off of running before the race.
Yes.
My kind of taper.
I was going to say, the Karen Smyers, I'd rather be 10% undertrained than 1% overtrained. I love that. And when you talk about legendary moments, obviously legendary moment with Roger Bannister breaking 4-minute mile in '95. Your legendary moment, right? Here's the 7-time Ironman world champion with a big lead running along, and here's Karen Smyers in second place. When did you get a sense that things were happening in front, that Paula Newby-Fraser was coming apart at the seams a little bit, or did you?
Well, I certainly didn't know the extent of it.
Yeah.
Even until I saw it on TV when they showed the. Yeah. I mean, when I passed her, I didn't know. I really thought that she might come back on me. I didn't know how bad she was until I saw the history of it unfolding.
Yeah.
But I was getting split, so I knew that there was a chance. I knew I was getting closer right from the beginning of the run. I was just to motivate myself. I was like, okay, see if you can make up 4 minutes in the first 8 miles, because I had done that the year before, and then I knew I had kind of slowed down, and so I said, okay, do that again, and then see if you can do it 2 more times.
Yeah.
So I was using that as just motivation to keep pushing myself, and I did get the 4 minutes the first 8 miles. But the second 8 miles, I think I only got 2.5. And so I was like, oh dear, this isn't looking so good.
Yeah.
But then, people started telling me, like, you still have a chance. She's not looking good. And even with 1.5 miles to go, it was still 1:40. And I'm like, she can hear the crowd now. Like, there's no way she's going to let me catch her. But I was still kind of pleased with myself that I made it into a race. So I was still kind of excited about the whole ordeal. But I remember just sort of laughing, like, yeah, right. If I run a 5-minute mile, I'll catch her. That's about the only way.
So when you run by her, you sort of had a proper up. She was like sort of staggering, but you at that point you didn't look back. You were going.
Well, I did look back once because I was like, I didn't know if she had just kind of cramped or I thought anything can happen still. 1/2 mile to go, and so I checked back.
Right after you passed, or as you took the corner?
After I took the corner, I looked
you didn't
back.
Look back and see her on the ground.
No. I mean, she was probably walking for a little bit, but it was after I turned the corner. I looked back. I thought, shame on me if she's like sprinting up on my shoulder and I don't look. Usually I have a policy of not looking back because you don't want to show weakness. I'm not concerned about you anymore. I passed you. But I thought in that case you want to know, because even if you're dying, you have a little bit left sometimes at the end of a marathon.
Mike, where were you at during all that?
I was out at the
probably
mile 10.
What pub were you at?
He was racing. He was still in the race.
Right, you were racing. I forgot.
Mile 10, still going out to the turnaround. But I think when she passed me, Paula, it seemed kind of close, and I said but didn't I say if you wanted, you got to really move,
pick it up.
Easy for you to say.
Don't give up. Maybe they just.
Some silly statement.
But I didn't have not that I ever had a great race there, but on the way back, a motorcycle, it wasn't with cell phones like these days.
They were the enormous,
those
huge
mobile home things you see in the military.
Yeah. I think we can get Michael on there. You want to talk to him? I was waiting at the finish.
They came out to tell me that she won, and said, do you want to go in and see her in her press conference is soon or something, or in 15 minutes or something. I had to run a 10K in about 40 minutes.
Yeah, that's what I said. I go, I have to go to the press conference at this time. Are you going to make it in? And he's like, I don't know.
So I missed the press. I finished, but I missed the
race. Yeah, I was like, well, wait, you go to her press conference, finish my race, get my medal. I'll take that. I love that. So, Michael, talk a little bit about the fact that Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, and you think about nowadays, you're the first guy to break the 4-minute mile. There's huge stories everywhere. You're a professional runner. I mean, he was none of that, right?
Yeah, he was
just a regular guy.
And as it says in the documentary, his pacer goes, he had a full load of medical studying to do. He was a full-time medical student,
right?
And and he would just go out at lunch for,
Run some quarters.
Yeah, both basically short and fast. And he didn't like.
So he wasn't running 100 miles a week.
Lydia would not have been his coach.
Yeah.
But they also, there was a guy from Australia who was planning to break 4-minute miles in Finland and who had a pacer.
Yeah.
So they had to do it that day to break it
before the other
guy, and they did. And I think 2 weeks later he ended up breaking Bannister's record, and then they had a big showdown at the in Canada at the they didn't call it not the English games. What are the
Commonwealth Games?
Commonwealth Games. They called it was another name at that time.
Else, yeah.
And they called the Miracle Mile, and coincidentally Phil Knight was there, who we interviewed also in the movie.
Phil Knight was interviewed for the movie?
Yeah, and he was saying how he was there, and that inspired him to, start Nike in a way, so...
Wow.
It's a lot of little factoids you never knew about this.
Love that. That is so cool. I just love
and it was the same thing and Phil Knight talks about, why can't I think of who he was racing?
Landy?
George.
John?
Landy.
John Landy.
John Landy, and Landy was leading by a lot the whole race, and it was the stadium in British Columbia was packed.
Yes.
And Phil Knight explains that he was right there when Landy looked over his shoulder to see where Bannister was, and as he looked, Bannister passed him on the inside.
Side.
Yeah.
I love that.
And and they both ran under 4, and that's kind of the postscript to the movie. Watching the not the
Miracle Mile.
Yeah, the Miracle Mile.
What's interesting is that people didn't. Back then, they thought your body would explode if you ran sub.
Well, I mean, the subtext of the title is Roger Bannister, Everest on the track, because at the same time they were saying running a 4-minute mile is impossible.
Right.
Climbing Mount Everest is impossible, and Roger got inspired by Hillary conquering Everest, which turned out to be the same day as the coronation of Queen Elizabeth.
Okay.
And we have Hillary talking about his thing, and Bannister saying that inspired me. He knew a lot about
each other. Huh?
Yeah. So it was in England needed heroes at the time because of post-World War. It was devastated by even George Dole, who was the Yale runner, said he got to Oxford and that he would have 1 egg a week. That was his ration.
That's the same with Bannister. That's what his training. He was on rations like that.
Yeah, there was rations.
Really?
Yeah.
He just had no food.
And this is 1952. They there was no cheese, I think, and 1 egg a week. So it was, and I think Bannister said, Wellington, as someone said, the worst thing about winning a war is losing.
The only thing
worse than losing a war is winning a war.
Yeah,
because you're so in debt. I mean, they owed the United States a lot, and it took a long time for them to rebound. And having Bannister, he kind of was suggesting that kind of also motivated him.
So have you done showings of the film before, or will this be the first?
Well,
showing?
It's funny. We showed it in New York. A couple of years ago, or a year ago, and before a big meet down at the Armory in New York, and there was someone there we didn't know, and it just came out that this IndieWire, which is an independent film website, had it voted as one of the top 10 best sports documentary made.
Ever.
Right there with Endless Summer and
my God.
Dogtown. You ever hear of Dogtown about the skateboarders?
I watched Dogtown. I'm a big documentary guy.
Yeah, okay.
And
all
When
that
We
stuff.
Were Kings.
With
those
Muhammad
kind of
Ali.
are on
So
there.
it's in good company. I don't know if I agree with it, but I'll take it.
So what are you working on now?
I've got a couple of features I'm working on, and we also may segue this into, we have a green light on doing a documentary on the 1968 Olympics with the John Carlos doing the black power symbols.
Yeah, Mexico City.
Mexico City. So we're going to be starting shooting that very soon.
John Howard has a fascinating story about the 68 Olympics because he was a cyclist then, and he, remember before the Olympics started, there was protests in the streets
Right.
in Mexico City, and they basically machine gunned these college kids. And so when John was racing, and he was in the pits before his the time trial, and he heard this pop, and he turned around, thought somebody's tire blew, and it was one of the revolutionaries killing himself right in the pit there.
Yeah.
And then John had to go race. Yeah.
Great.
It was pretty wild.
Pumped up or totally depressed? One or
Yeah,
the
at the
other,
same time. So Karen, when you look, besides Ironman World Championships, what do you consider your best race? What do you have? 2 World Championships, 2 ITU World Championships?
2 ITU,
Yes.
well, 3 the long distance.
Yes.
So 3 plus Hawaii, yeah.
What do you consider your best race?
You know,
Or the one that meant the most to you?
Oh, they're all special in their own way, you know. You can't, Ironman definitely it's hard to compare that to anything else. But the ITU was very cool, especially in Orlando when I was so new to it and it was so unexpected. I mean, in Hawaii, I kind of had the feeling like I should be able to do this. I mean,
right?
I knew Paula was very hard to beat, but
Yes.
I kind of, I finished second to her, so I knew that I could be in the hunt.
Yeah.
Whereas in Orlando, that was sort of a big surprise.
Let's talk about that, because I remember that race, and what was great about that race was there was Carol Montgomery, there was a Joy Hansen, and
Aaron Baker.
And Aaron Baker. I mean, the field was amazing,
Yeah.
and you just like ran your way through, and it just sort of like, wait, who's winning?
Well, I always tell a little anecdote
Yeah.
from that story, which I don't know if he even knows I tell this story, but during that race when I was, my running was usually my best part, and I had trouble with my biking, but I
Yes.
came out in a great place on my bike finally. So I was second running out of transition, and I was like determined not to finish fourth because I'd finished fourth the year before, and I realized it's sort of like the Olympics, like fourth gets nothing.
Yes.
So I was like, I got to be top 3. So as I started to run, within the first mile or two, both Carol and Joy passed me at once.
Yes.
And Erin was out in the lead, and we knew she had done an Ironman, so her legs might be tired. We were praying.
never know.
That was
Yeah,
the
with
only
her.
way she was
Yeah.
beatable, I thought. But so I found myself in fourth, and I just couldn't keep up to Carol and Joy when
Yeah.
they went by me, and I was trying, and I'm doing the math. I'm like, oh my God, I'm back in
Fourth
fourth.
again.
That's where I don't want to be. And
First
I started this
loser.
real downward spiral, like mentally.
Yeah.
And it was middle of Orlando, like middle of the day in Orlando,
hot.
so hot as can be. We're on this golf course with no shade, and I just started to get into this funk of, God, it's hot out here. Like, how can they expect us to race in this? And what are they starting us at noon? And why are we on a golf course with no shade? All these things that were making me have excuses for running terribly, know.
Yes.
And at about 3.5 miles, I ran by Scott Molina. And, Aaron is leading the race, but he
He's
sees
blown
me,
up.
who
Oh,
I'm an
yeah.
American, and he saw that, second and third were right there, and he's cheered for me. And I must have given him a look like, do you know how hot I am? And he right away, he's like, Karen, you got to want it. And it was a comment that just sunk in
it
for
worked.
some reason. It just like, I'm one of those people that likes to take things from outside myself to, I don't like go inside. Like I know
Yeah.
Mark Allen, like he blocks out everything. Whereas I'm like, anything that can help me, give it to me,
Ice Cube, a word of encouragement.
Yes,
you name
exactly.
it,
Or
yeah.
I'll look around for, seeing, someone that's 300 pounds and still trugging along, and I'll
Yeah.
be like, if they can do it, I can do it, Anyway, so that comment kind of went in. I'm like, I can't believe I am trained a year for this race, and all I can think about is I'm hot. Like, in 10 minutes, I can jump in a cold pool and have a cold beer. Like, stop whining. Second and third are right there. You can see them. And it just kind of turned my head around, and I just started to reel those guys in. And I was still just trying to get into third, but they passed Erin finally
Yes.
because she was getting tired. And so I found myself going by Erin without even really realizing it. And then with a half mile to go, there was a little hill, and I just happened to close on those guys. And I thought, oh, my God, just go for it. So I ran by them. And I remember Carol startled and looked to her side as I went by, and she turns to Joy and she says, Karen's back, like I'd been resurrected or something. And I remember thinking like it was like I was resurrected, because I was like in a bad mental space, and then I kind of came back to life. So I credit Scott Molina with that win for sure.
Well, what's funny too, because I'm sure Carol's going, okay, as we pass We
they were.
passed Aaron. We passed Karen a while ago.
I totally took them by surprise.
I'm like going to go.
Yeah.
I'm going to make my move on Joy at this mark.
Exactly.
And who's that person who just went by us?
Yes, exactly. I took
Element of surprise.
Yeah.
As opposed to you making your move on McKeely in England.
That wasn't much of a move, as it turns out.
That was Manchester, right?
Yeah.
Yes, that was Manchester, and you're getting ready for the sprint.
I didn't know that my sprint and McKeely's sprint were so different.
I'm about to drop you. Wait, where are you going?
Yeah, exactly.
Where are
You had caught
going?
up and you really felt strong. You know?
Yeah, I
you caught
felt
it from
strong
behind.
the whole run. I was like biding my time, thinking, I feel so amazing
Which
today.
year was that?
Let's see, 93.
93 World Championships, Manchester, England.
Yeah.
Okay. And,
Yeah, that was
so
a
you're-
hard lesson learned.
Yeah, so
that
you
was
caught- you-
one of the most disappointed I've ever felt, only in that I wanted to go back and do it again immediately because I didn't feel like I'd given it my best. Like,
Yeah.
I thought I was being smart, saving it for the end.
Sure,
but
saving
I
it for the
had
sprint.
no idea, that I was so outmatched. So I would have at least tried a different strategy that would have had me, completely exhausted at the finish. And if she'd beat me then, I would have been like, okay, fine,
Yes.
like you deserve it. But that time I felt like, wait a minute, I didn't know. Can we go back and do it again?
And I think like 2 weeks later you raced in Germany against her and you came off kind of close. Instead you
went by her.
Ran hard right from the
Right from the
start. Yeah,
start,
I just
and
knew
not-
never get into it.
Do not ever. I've seen McKeely Jones in sprints back then with Paul Newby Frazier, with who name it. I've never saw her lost. The only sprint I ever saw her lost,
The Olympics. Yeah, me too.
The Olympics.
And I was calling that. Like, if I could have bet $100,000 on her, I would
McKeely?
have. And then she got beat. I was like, how did that happen?
And then the gal who beat her
now
went
we know how.
positive for
Now we
drugs.
know how it happened.
How
yeah.
could that possibly happen? I can't believe that. So, Mike, when you look at how those guys trained back then, he's running sub 4 minute mile. How many miles a week was the guy running, you think? Like 10?
that's a good question.
Probably not much.
I would say no more than
25.
10.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, maybe that little.
Yeah, I mean 5 days. I mean he would take 4 days off before a race, and
I love that. Dave Scott
And it's
doesn't
not
take
like he
4
was
hours
cross
off.
training. It's
Yeah.
not like he was doing other things the way
He was going to school.
Yeah.
He was going to
they
school.
did have Fred Stamfel, I think was his coach's name, and they would meet and they would, do maybe 10 by 400, I think.
That's sort
So
of
maybe 15 miles, but
all
I don't
intense.
think it was all intense. And he even says I was not. He said I only had so much time, so I figured I'd make my legs work as hard as they could when I ran. So there was no long, slow distance philosophy.
But I think it showed one thing he wasn't good at was when they had to run heats, like if they ever had like a
Well, I think at the
qualifying
Olympics,
and then,
which is why he ended up continuing on, he said that they added an extra heat in the Olympics, in the Helsinki Olympics, and he was expected to win the mile there, and so instead of doing 2 heats or 4 heats, they did 3. Instead of doing 3, they did 4. Instead of doing 2, they did 3. I don't know, but they added one kind of behind the
Sort
back.
of last minute.
Yeah, and he hadn't trained like that, so he said he was in the final straight in the Olympics, and he goes, I gave the instructions to my legs to run, but they just didn't respond the way they always used to.
My legs said no.
He goes, it was my fault, and his training partner said, if not for that, could have, would have, should have. If not for that extra heat, he definitely would have won the. Because I think training, they did some crazy times that would have,
I'm sure.
But because of that, and as he also says that, I always thought winning an Olympic gold would be the epitome of a running career, but people have decided breaking the 4 minute mile is better.
Well, and from what I read, I remember reading where everybody was waiting for the announcement of what the time was.
Well, the spectator
movie
in describing it on the film is just, I've seen it 100 times. Every time I get goosebumps.
I actually cry every time. So
Because the announcer goes, everybody's waiting, and as soon as he says 3, the whole crowd just goes crazy, right? Because
and
it's
another
first
little factor, the announcer ended
Yes.
up being the person who started the Guinness Book of World Records.
Wow.
The something twins. I forget this name.
That's so
You're
wild.
putting me on the
though.
pressure, but
I mean, just
and
being
his
in that
brother,
audience,
his twin, got murdered by the IRA.
Oh my God.
So there's a lot of historical stuff in there that you would never know. I never knew. So,
But I love that you had somebody who was in the stands,
Right.
who could remember when the guy goes
No,
3.
he had,
and the guy-
he had his program.
He had the program.
He remembers everything about
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
I love that.
And
Awesome.
he was even, he was saying it was raining, so one of his friends didn't show. They had to so it was quite, he's very, very good interview, and we kind of lucked out getting him. I mean, it's like, and the same thing with, and then as it turned out, we found out that there was the other guy in the race. It lives in Rochester and is what's his name's neighbor, and we could have gone, but this was after we edited, so it was too late. But it's amazing how.
It's
and
such
we
a
were
small
searching
world.
for people going in,
Yeah.
and we couldn't find them.
Yeah.
And then after the fact,
Then you
it's
find the guy's your
yeah.
next door neighbor. That's always
Right.
good. Great. Mike King and Karen Smyers, thanks so much for taking time. And if people want to get the movie, they can get it on Netflix?
Yes, get it on Netflix.
iTunes.
Not Netflix.
I'm sorry,
I think it's iTunes or or Amazon.
Amazon. Love that.
And for all I know, I should talk to the distributor. It could be. I don't think it's Netflix. So.
We might have to get it out to San Diego and do a showing. That would be
That'd
fun.
be fun.
We may be going out to San Diego to interview people at for the 68 Olympics. Well, I'll let you know.
Let me know. We'll set that up.
All right.
We'll fill up the.
Well, maybe you want to see it first.
I'm seeing it tonight.
All
I
right.
can't
Can
wait.
write a review only if you like it, though.
Okay. Again, this is Breakfast with Bob, Boston Marathon Edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. Hold on, everybody. We will be right back.